Hi, it's Hope and welcome to the video. This, as you can tell by the title, is going to be my top 10 books of 2020. This list was super hard to make because when I was originally figuring out the books for this, I had I think 18. So that was really hard to narrow down, but I kind of managed to. I think this is the order. I'm also not 100% sure, but this is the order I'm going with because it has taken me over a week to figure out this list, and I'm going with what I have now because it feels right. But I will go through from 10 to number 1, so we'll be going in backwards. We'll go 10, 9, 8, 7 to 1 being my all-time favorite, my favorite book of 2020. And yeah, I'll kind of try to explain a little bit about these. A good chunk of them are the second or the third book in a series, so I'll do my best to describe the first book, for example. But let's get started. At number 10, we have Wicked Crown by Angelina J. Steffort, and this is the second book in the Shattered Kingdom series. This is a high fantasy series where we follow, in the first book, Shattered Kingdom, we follow a 17-year-old girl named Gandrit who at 7 years old was taken from her home and taken to the middle of the Kamala Desert, I think that's what it is, to train in this compound. I can't remember exactly what compound's called, but she trains there for 10 years. She has she's meant to have one more year until she will be able to go out and be assigned on missions, and before that final year, she is taken from the compound by a man that was sent by one of the lords in the country to take her back to do a task for him, and we go from there, and this task is a very big task. That's all I can say. The second book follows right after the first book, and I can't say anything about the second book because spoilers, but I love the characters. I love the friendships and the overall plot line, and the world itself is it's so good. This was actually the most recent read on this list because I literally read this on the 27th of December, so that kind of screwed this. I had my list, I thought I had my list, then I read this, and then I had to switch it all up, and that's what took so long. But I read this I think it's 505 pages in one night. It was just so good. I'm so excited for Shadow Rule that comes out on the 28th of February, I think, and I'm so excited for that. But I just love this. I'm honestly shocked that this made it onto this list, but just the characters are so good. The world is so well written. The villain, oh, the villain is going to be a good one. The villain's a good one. There were so many twists and turns, and I just love this. At number 9, we have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, and this is a contemporary paranormal where we follow Yadriel, who is a part of this community. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to mispronounce it, but it's a part of this community where basically you can kind of communicate with the dead and do all that type of thing, and there are tasks that there's basically this task that you have to do when you turn, I think it's 15, to prove yourself, and the task is different for males than it is females, and Yadriel, since he is trans, didn't get to have this this ceremony because he isn't a real boy, when that is in fact 100% not true, but his family is all that. And basically he decides to do this ceremony himself one night after his cousin dies, and it's kind of like to find his cousin's spirit, but in accident he accidentally summons a spirit of a boy from his high school that just died, and it's kind of the journey of Yadriel and this boy Julian trying to figure out how Julian died, as well as finding a way to prove to Yadriel's family that he is a true boy and all of that. And I knew going into this I was gonna like it. I didn't expect it to make it to the top 10 list, but I love Yadriel and Julian as characters, as well as Yadriel's cousin Marcia. These characters just like were ones that I loved so much, and just kind of like, I don't even know how to word this, but like I think it's like truly the characters that I love in this, and the ending had me like I think it was the last 5 chapters had me going screaming, crying of sadness, crying of happiness. I loved it, and all that. See, I can't do justice for these books, so I will leave all the books linked in the description so you can actually go read the review, read the description, because I suck at them. Yet they're some of my favorites, but I'm like, I can't describe it because I just have these views that are just like, I can tell you the good things, and then it's like other things I'm like, I don't know. But let's move on to one that, again, I'm going to suck at explaining. But we have House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. As we go on this list, you will notice that Sarah J. Maas pops up a few times. But House of Earth and Blood is the first in a adult high fantasy series. And House of Earth and Blood, we follow a girl named Bryce who, after events that happened, I think 2 years before, she has to help this group of people to solve these murders that are linked back into her past. And this is, again, a high fantasy, so Bryce is a half fae. There are like werewolves, fae, angels, there are like merfolk. There are so many different like types of like creatures, like there's different types of people, and it's just this really big high fantasy. It is a chunky book. It is like 800 and some pages. The first like 400 pages are really like dense and boring, but once you get past that first like 450 pages, it like blew me away. This is the technically only adult fantasy on this list, and one of the few adult fantasies that I've read. But I just love Bryce as a character. She's badass. I love the main love interest of Hunt. He's a pretty good character in my opinion, and I'm excited to see where this series goes. But this book just like, it blew me away. I went in knowing I was gonna love it because I had read pretty much, I think all but like one of Sarah J. Maas's books before this point. Like before I read House of Earth and Blood, I had like 2 books left, and I knew I loved Sarah J. Maas's writing, but this just blew it away. The world is very confusing, and I still don't understand it properly, but that will be a reread eventually. 2021 here will be a reread, so I'll actually understand the world. But like, even without understanding the world, you can understand the characters and the plot, and it's so good, and it's just so many twists and turns, and I'm gonna shut up. Now we have the first book that I own a physical copy. I actually, out of these 10 books, only own 3 in physical copy. But at number 7 is I Wish You All the Best by Deaver. and this is a like queer contemporary novel where we follow Ben, who comes out to their parents as non-binary and gets kicked out of the house, and they have to go live with their sibling, like with their sister, and it's just them kind of navigating the final few months of high school, living with their sister at a new school, as well as not, like, they don't openly come out as non-binary to their school, so it's them struggling to not be called by the pronouns that they want to, but they're scared to come out, and it's just this it's really cute because it's not only them kind of figuring out themselves, but them making friends and entering a relationship. And it is just such a fluffy read. More like, I read this in one sitting. I didn't read the physical copy one sitting. I got an ebook of it and then decided to get a physical copy after I read it. So this technically I haven't even opened. But this is a book that I know I'm going to be rereading many times in the future. It just, like, it talks about things of, like, depression and anxiety, and as well as, like, obviously gender identity and then sexuality. It's just such a good book. And I know for a fact that just based on this book that Mason Deaver is now going to be a, like, auto-buy author for sure. Next we have Empire Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, so I cannot explain what this book's about, because literally if I said one word pretty much, I would spoil the previous 4 books. But the first book, Throne of Glass, is about an assassin named Selena who, at the beginning of the book, is imprisoned in these mines for crimes, but there is this like king's assassin contest where Prince Dorian uses Selena as his, like, pick, and so she ends up leaving the mines, going to the castle, and participating in this assassin competition. And it is much more deep than that. While she's at the castle, she discovers things that she shouldn't have that further along the plot and all of that. And I love this entire series. It was really hard to not put every single book on this series. Like, so many of the books, like, I love almost all the books. You'll also notice that there's another book in this series on this list. Oops. But I just love, specifically about Empire Storms, it just, like, I don't have the words to describe it, but, like, everything is just so great. It is so, overall, with the Throne of Glass series, everything is so rich. The characters are so well written, and, like, I'm literally gonna start crying. I don't know why. It's like you genuinely fall in love with these characters and this world, and I really need to reread this series. I'm like almost wanting to cry because of my emotions, but, like, I just love this. See, I love this book so much, and I don't have any more words to say. At number 5, we have Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This wouldn't be me talking about favorites if there wasn't a Cassandra Clare book on here. But this is the first book in the Last Hours trilogy, which is like Cassandra Clare's most recent, like, trilogy. Like, this came out 2020, and it's a chunker. Chain of Gold, we follow a group of shadow hunters, which shadow hunters are humans with angel blood that fight demons and all of that. And we are in 1903 Edwardian London, and we follow this group of shadow hunters, as there are new shadow hunters that move to London, and this brings a mysterious illness that causes the shadow hunters to get sick and we have to figure out kind of where this illness is coming from and all of that. That is just the very base plot. I love our main characters. I love Cordelia, I love the Merry Thieves, I love every single character in this book pretty much, except a couple. I'm not going to say names, but like there's one that literally I wouldn't hesitate to murder, but all of our like main characters I pretty much love. I love every single book that Cassandra Clare has written in the Shadowhunter world. And I'm surprised that this isn't up further based on when I read it. I remember, like, I'm in love with this. I'm so excited for Chain of Iron to see where this continues. It's just, I love it. I just love it. That's all I can say. Next we have Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. And this is the 7th and final book in the Throne of Glass series, the series that I mentioned previously, so I obviously am not going to be explaining it, but Kingdom of Ash is probably one of the best conclusions to a series that I've read. It is so good, but it honestly could have been expanded on and split into 2 books. That is my only negative thing about this book. Other than that, it is perfect. I love every single thing pretty much. Again, except a few things. If you've read the book, you know, oh, stabbed my heart. But this book made me laugh, made me cry, made me happy, made me sad, and all of that. And I really wanted a book that, from the Throne of Glass series, that I also felt like deserves just like an honorable mention in the middle of this is Queen of Shadows, which is the 4th book. Quick honorable mention, like I also love that one too. In the now we're on to the top 3. Now at number 3 is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a book that I read at the beginning of December. This is the sequel to From Blood and Ash, and From Blood and Ash we follow a maiden named Poppy who is not meant to be looked upon, not meant to be touched, not meant to have pretty much any sort of contact with people pretty much. And then we also follow Poppy's guard named Hawk, and it is the story of Poppy and Hawk as things happen in the world, and it brings them closer together and all of that. I can't say anything more, but this is a like new adult fantasy romance, really smutty. I like A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire like blew me away. Like, it is kind of repetitive in some aspects, but those repetitions are what I love about this. I love, because in this book, obviously, the relationships and the friendships are much more, like, in stone. It's a lot more, like, established, and, like, I love learning more about the world, as in this book we learn so much about the world and the history and the characters and all of that, and I absolutely love Poppy and Hawk, and I just love this. I love this. If you've read this book, please tell me you're on my side when we need the joining to happen. I'm pretty sure I read that and just went, like what? Like, I need it to happen. Next, in the number 2 slot is Queen of Waltz by Amanda Foody. This is the 3rd and final book in the Shadow Game series, which is, I'm pretty sure, my all-time favorite trilogy. And the first book is Ace of Shades. In the first book, we follow a girl named N whose mother traveled to the city of New Rains, aka the City of Sin, a few months prior, and her mother has gone missing. So N has to travel to New Rains to find her mother and while trying to find her mother, she meets this gang lord named Levi, and Levi agrees to help and find her mother, and they get wrapped up in this thing called the Shadow Game, which is basically like a game that risks their lives and all of that. This is a very like Las Vegas inspired place, and like I love the characters. I love the queerness. Like if you go like off of our main cast, so many of them are queer. The plot and the characters and just the city itself is just so like so good, and this is my number 2 pick. Like I genuinely in Queen of Waltz, I laughed, I cried so much, I screamed, I cried more. I literally cried for like 20 minutes after this book ended because of how sad I was for this series to end. And I love this book because there is so much going on and all of that, and like I need to reread this so bad. I also need to get my hands on a physical copy of it, but I have the first 2 books in paperback, and I would really like this series to match, so I'm waiting to see if a paperback will get released, which will probably get released like end of 2021. So I will probably have to reread this series before then, because I don't think I can wait almost a year to reread this series, because it is my all-time favorite trilogy. And now on my number 1 book of this year. This one was, with my number 1 and my number 2 slot, it was really hard to figure out what order these went in, but reluctantly, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas won. This is my number 1 book of the year. A Court of Mist and Fury is the second book in the A Court of Thorn and Roses series, so I can't explain this book specifically, but I can explain the first book, A Court of Thorn and Roses, which A Court of Thorn and Roses, we follow a 19-year-old girl named Feyre who is kind of like a hunter. She has to hunt in these woods near her family's home to feed her family. One day there is this wolf in the forest that she believes may or may not be a fae, but she kills it anyway because her and her family need the food. This causes a repercussion where it turns out that it is a fae, and she gets dragged into the fairylands by the High Lord of the Spring Court as a punishment, and that is a very basic description, but A Court of Mist and Fury it's one of my all-time favorite books, I can say now. I can't even like say anything because it's huge spoilers, but like the enemies to lovers in this is just great. I love all of the characters, I love everything. Chapter 42, 48, and 55, if you know what I'm talking about. Chef's kiss. Love it. Trying to think of what else I can say without spoilers, because like pretty much everything I can say is spoilers, but like this is one of my favorite books of all time. I love it. I've read it twice this year. This is the only book on this list that I've read twice in 2020, so like does that show it's my favorite? But I love this series as a whole. I'm so excited for A Court of Silver Flames to come out February 16th, 3 days after my birthday. But I just love this and all of that. So those are my top 10 books. I was probably talking for forever about these, but yeah, this is all over the place. But what are your top 10 books? And I hope you enjoy this video, and bye.